policy expert. I have a background in food policy, generally speaking, but Blanca really is our very seasoned practitioner who's done a lot of policy work at local and state governmental levels. So it's our pleasure, Blanca, for you to present this content today, and just wanted to congratulate you on taking this step forward and let you know that you're in good company, the company you're keeping with this cohort of grantees across Colorado. There's going to be a very interesting emergence of a variety of initiatives at the local level that you all will be leading in your respective communities, and that you can all be inspired by and learn from as you talk with each other. So I'll turn it over to you, Blanca.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And as Maggie mentioned, we're just so excited for all of you to be part of this training. And we hope that this content is able to get your feet wet and really become excited about advocacy at the local level. And we can go ahead and get started. As Maggie mentioned, my background is in public policy. My name is Blanca Martinez Gaviña. I have done a lot of work at the local governmental level, but also at the state level. So I'm always very excited for people to get involved and get engaged because it really is the most direct connection to advocacy that we can have as citizens. So let's go ahead and get started. So what are we up to today in the coming months? And also, just a quick note, there is the Spanish version of this presentation. So if someone can, Maggie, if you can upload it to the chat, or if someone can go ahead and send it over, you will be able to follow if that is something that you prefer. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So what are we up to today? Today we are going to really go deep into what is advocacy. What is advocacy at the local level? What are some of those structures look like, and how is it that we can get involved? And how is it that we can begin to engage and practice? I left a little bit of homework for those of you that were here with us last time, which was go to your city website, go to your county website, and begin to get familiarized with departments, with the names of folks, with the elected officials, and also with some of the governmental employees. So that's where we're at today, October, where we're heading. And next time that we meet, we'll be really practicing and creating a policy committee. So we'll be diving deep. We'll hopefully have a policy that we want to work on, and then we'll be able to distill the step-by-step process to make sure that everyone has the skill sets and has the understanding of how to move forward. So we'll be able to do that and prepare a food action plan with this policy agenda and ensure that everybody understands some of those basic cycles of policy process, whether that's a different type of action. We can go ahead and go to the next one. So what are today's learning objectives? So today we are really going to review the policy cycle. We were able to review the first three in our last session. So we will learn about what are the other remaining three, which a policy cycle can vary sometimes depending on where we're at, whether we're at the local or at the state or the federal level. They vary slightly, but overall, this is sort of the general way that the policy process moves. We'll also understand and begin to get our feedback, as I mentioned, on key policy processes for the city of Pueblo and for the county. And we'll dive a little bit deeper as to what does that mean. Finally, we'll begin to get familiar with who are the key policy-making players in our local units of government. So who are those folks that are making these decisions? Who are those folks that we should prioritize when engaging? Again, depending on the policy process that we're going to take on and depending at what level, whether it's at the city or at the county level. Let's go ahead. Okay, so let's review and recap what we learned last session. We can go ahead. So we understood in the last session that local policy has many, many, many different benefits, right? That it's the direct way, people call it one of the most direct ways to really engage in our democratic process because these are people that live, work, and play with us, the folks that are making the decisions, the city officials, those that are elected officials, the folks that work in these different positions, governmental employees, they are people that are our neighbors and that we see on sometimes on a day-to-day basis. So local policy really offers that direct connection, and we can very much localize the action that we want to see happen. Sometimes we can go as localized as a corner in our city with some of the actions that we can take. So it really offers a wealth of opportunities for us to be engaged and to make a difference. And again, local policy can happen at many different places. We've been mostly focusing on what is the local by engaging in city government and county government. But let's also remember that there's a lot of different entities, institutional entities of government, which are the school districts, which are colleges and universities, healthcare systems. All of these places offer a space for us to make a difference. And sometimes when we begin to work and advocate at the local level, we see that they're all connected. We also learn about the difference between strong and weak mayor, which really matters for policy strategy. So in Pueblo, we have a strong mayor system, which means that the mayor does ultimately make a lot of decisions, and the mayor has a lot of power in directing funding. So learning those differences makes a really huge it makes a huge difference in terms of what kind of strategy we will be taking forward. So just making sure that we remember Pueblo is a strong mayor system. You can go ahead. We also learn about the first three um, stages of policy. And we learn about problem identification. We learn about policy formulation, which is for us to create the policy, the placement on the policy agenda. Today, we will see how the adoption of policy change, which is when we are able to pass an ordinance or a proclamation, that is where that happens. And then we'll see policy implementation. That's when we really begin to see the policy taking shape. And then one of the things that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about, which is also very important and very necessary, is the outcome and monitoring. So that's when you, as advocates, really need to track and ensure that the policy is giving the results that it was intended, or maybe it's giving unintended consequences, and there is room to hopefully fix that with your elected officials or with the administrative party that is leading that change. So let's just keep this in mind. It's really important. Okay, so what is the policy? What are some of the policy processes um, that are within our local infrastructure like? We can go ahead to the next one. So we're going to talk today about the three main ways that policy changes can happen at your local level. And I also want to preface by saying that sometimes these policy processes can go together, and sometimes they can happen simultaneously. But these are the main ways that you can think about of how to engage with policy processes at both the city and the county level. Let's go ahead to the next slide. And I'm looking over here because I am also keeping track of time. So what are some of the key policy process? So one of the big ones, and sometimes this can be one of the most intimidating processes, is the budget. So the budget is a very specific cycle that happens, and it's also directed by the state. It's how the city plans to use its revenue, how the county plans to use its revenue. Another way that you can engage in key policy process is through legislative action. So this is when you see city council voting on very specific things. This is when you hear about, oh, there's an ordinance that is up for a vote, that's gonna be heard on whatever date, and it's maybe not controversial. Maybe it's about potholes. This is a very specific way, is the most traditional way that we can think about how to make a difference. And then the third one is through administrative changes and actions. Administrative changes and actions don't always require neither legislative or budget action. They can really begin as a conversation. This can begin with a conversation with an employee from Parks and Rec. This can be a conversation with the director of finance. So this is one that I think is the least used by advocates because they don't realize how much of this power in making differences these folks have at the local city or county level. So making sure that you begin to have those conversations and build those relationships with your local government employees, because a lot of times they can have a lot of influence by making those administrative changes. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about budgets, especially for the city of Pueblo. So what is it? Again, as I mentioned, it's a legally binding document. All the local governments have to have one and able to be functioning. I know that Pueblo just became incorporated a few years ago. So having this budget of this size, it's something that is relatively new. So they are still learning how to use, if there is additional revenue, they're still learning. So this is a great time for all of you to get engaged and maybe see what are some of the ways that the city can really reinvest in some of the projects that you are leading. So how does it work? Really, it's a year-long process, which is usually presented. I know that it was just presented recently in October, and then they take what they call public hearings for folks from the community to come and have conversations and maybe discuss some of the proposals on the budget. The budget in Pueblo usually is adopted in November, and then there is a presentation of it usually at that time, and then there is another one in January. But I want to caution you, do not wait until the public hearings between October and November to come and have conversations as to the budget and how the finances are going to be discussed. Have conversations prior to that. Meet with the director, meet with the mayor, have conversations with city council members. And again, all of this information is public. We provided all of the different links as you see in this page, and you can get familiar with what that looks like. In terms of who are the main players, the mayor is, because we do have a strong mayor system, they are the main player, but the council also has a say on how the budget gets adopted. So meaning how it gets passed. Again, the finance department, they are the ones that carry all of this wealth of knowledge. They're the ones that direct the budget process. So they have a lot of information. And then also the department heads, each of them have to propose a budget for their department. So they have a huge say as to how that gets done. Let's go to the next one. The Pueblo County is very similar. It's very similar. They follow a very similar timeline. Again, it's a legally binding document, except their timeline seems to be a little bit later in the year, in November and December. And where I'm going to focus is who are the key players, because of their governmental structure is a little bit different. Then there is a slight difference in who is involved. So the county commissioners, they are the main players. They're the ones that make the main decisions. The county officials, however, they propose, just like the department heads at the city, they propose the department budgets. And then again, the finance and budget department, they lead the budgeting process. So from the very beginning of the year, and once those budgets get proposed, they have all of the information as to how this money is going to be used. They have an understanding whether there is a surplus. They have an understanding as to what the general or the capital fund would be like. And we can definitely send a little bit more information about that. Let's go ahead to the next one. So let's talk a little bit about legislative action. Again, this is one of the most traditional ways to think about getting involved. And this is when you see sometimes protests from advocates showing up at city council protesting an ordinance or a resolution. This is one of the most traditional ways that folks kind of understand that they can get involved. So what is the difference between an ordinance and a resolution? An ordinance, it's a very specific law that cities get to put together. For example, city limits can be are an ordinance that is done by the city. A resolution, we maybe have seen a lot of resolutions during COVID, which is how does a city believe they should act. So it's an opinion about an issue, right? So there were a lot of ordinances that we saw across the country about mask, about how to resolve the situation that we were having with COVID. So that's a difference that we need to understand when we are advocating. Are we advocating for an ordinance change? Are we doing that through a resolution? So this can happen anytime. You can get engaged at any time. You can have a conversation about an ordinance at any time during the year. But I do have to caution, sometimes when it is high budget season, may not be the right time to follow through with an ordinance unless it does have a budget implication. So in that, who are the main folks that we need to engage with? Those are the folks that are the department heads that where the resolution or the ordinance is held. The finance department, we need to make sure that there are no or there are budget implications, that we fully understand how much it would cost or whether it is a self-funding ordinance. And then obviously the mayor or the county commissioners, they would be the ones that are ultimately approving and negotiate the substance of the ordinance or the resolution. Let's go ahead with the next one. And similar to the to the other one, we had administrative changes, but again, the difference in this is that it can be done very fast and it can happen at any time. And this is where we see how a specific program or how the services that are provided by the city are done. So making sure that we know if there's a program that we want to change, if there's a program that we want to understand, that this is one where we first start having conversations. And who are the main players in both the city and county? The department heads. Again, begin to have conversations with those department heads, get to know them, get to know why they do the work they do. They're usually very passionate people. And then the finance department, I think you've heard a common thread here, in which is get to know your finance departments at the city and local level. And again, making sure that you engage the mayor, the city council, or and the county commissioners when you begin to have these conversations. And yep, go ahead, Maggie.
I just wanted to let folks know that I put in the chat 3 examples of each of what Blanca's just walked you through to give you an idea of how that might play out in Pueblo. Things you've already accomplished, things you've been exploring, things that are possible. So some concrete examples of what Blanca's walked through. Thanks, Blanca.
Of course. Uh, Thank you so much, Maggie, for those examples. And I put a little bit of levity here with Leslie Knope and Parks and Rec, which is government employees. What I hear is people caring loudly at me. So get to know those government employees because they usually have a lot of sway. Sometimes they have been in these positions for a very long time. So if you can become um, really connected with them, they can walk you through the process. They know all the ins and out. They understand deeply how each of the city council members work. They might know what are some of the soft spots of the mayor, or they might know some of the soft spots of the county commissioners. So they can be truly your best friends when making a change, whether it's administrative or whether it's even a budget change, or whether it's even a local, another local policy process. So get to know those employees. They are there usually because they love to support their community and they're passionate about supporting different projects or different or many different ways that the community is trying to make a better environment for everyone. Next one, I think that we are at time. Just, I know that was fast and furious, but I hope that you are able to go back to the slides and really read them in depth. They are meant to give you that introduction to show you that there are many different levels, many different ways that you can engage, and each of the process can lend itself to whatever advocacy plan it is that you have as a coalition or as just a neighbor in your community. Are there any quick questions? And I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but
Yeah, we can
maybe
take
if
a
you can.
couple.
Okay. And feel free to also put them in the chat. And if we don't have time for them today, we are happy to respond um, to them. And I don't see any hands up.
Thank you, Blanca. Just
Of
to put it
course.
into some more context, so we have one more, the part 3 of this training with TerraSoma will be at our next month's all hands meeting. And then after that, you've heard us mention a few times developing a policy plan. So that'll probably look like a sub-coalition. So those who are interested in getting involved with advocacy work with Pueblo Food Project will have a space for that. And some of these things that Blanca mentioned throughout the training and presentation this morning will actually get to apply within that group. So that's a little bit of the bigger picture as to why we're doing this and where it's going. Last call for any questions before we move on or comments. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
I don't know if it showed up in the chat, but I was just curious what advice you can give us as a coalition for choosing those priorities.
Sure. So we've been in dialogue in the background, Dr. Kelly, with Serena and Megan about this question, and other coalitions are at different phases in narrowing down what the policy agenda looks like. A couple of things. First of all, you have those really excellent result statements that all of you have worked so hard to develop. So as you formulate your longer term policy agenda, thinking about what policy options you have that roll up to or help lead to achieving those results. And so as we've been talking this over from a strategy perspective from Megan Serena, our thought is that the coalition works on that very component early next year, and that there's this sort of practice round as you're doing that broader work for a whole portfolio of policy efforts, by identifying one kind of low-hanging fruit policy-wise, and it could be any of those 3 categories that Blanca walked you through this morning. So we'll drill down and take a look at what that option might be. And the idea is that in the first quarter, you work on that as you're formulating your bigger, longer term policy change. One of the tools we have that I recently shared with Megan is we have action menus that we can develop that are policy options that are responsive to those kinds of result statements you want. So that could be about urban food production, that could be about food skills development, that could be about regional or local food infrastructure development like food hubs or aggregation. It could be cold storage in the hunger relief system. It could be procurement policies in the school district around procuring local food. So one of the neat things about policy work at a local level around food systems is you can work in municipal local government context the way that Blanca outlined. You can do that kind of work similarly in school districts, in hospital systems. Like if you want to set procurement guidelines, that would be sort of a legislative action version of what a healthcare system could do. So you'll have a lot of options and can spend some time early in 25 formulating the full policy agenda and then identifying a single line of work that you want to start with just to cut your teeth, get everybody used to it, build the relationships that Blanca was guiding you on this morning and going from there. An example from Boulder Broomfield is they have 5 municipalities across the 2 counties that will be updating their comprehensive plans in 2025. So the Boulder Broomfield Food Security Network's policy agenda for next year is to get food and ag related policy language in comprehensive plans in 5 municipalities that then they are responsible to implement over the next 10 years. So when Boulder Broomfield learned that there was this opportunity, that's what they decided to drill down on and focus on next year. And they have other policy ideas that they're interested in pursuing later, but that's going to be their first focus. So that's an example of that. And I think you heard in Denver, La Plata County right now is a ballot initiative that will get voted on during this election cycle to use some of the lodging tax to provide funding for childcare subsidies and development of childcare facilities. So that's food focused in the sense that more people can work outside the home for pay if there's an adequate childcare infrastructure available in La Plata County. So that's another focused example where they're going in this election season. They're focused on one thing. It's an administrative change in the lodging tax, so a reappropriation of the funds from this existing tax structure for a new use. So those are a few different examples that give you an idea of what's possible. And you've already had some policy efforts that have been successful that Pueblo Food Project has led over the last several years. So you can also lean into that track record as you consider what you want your focus to be. Yeah, exactly. On the power mapping, for sure. So the power mapping work that you've done can definitely be in service to what your policy agenda is and how you approach the advocacy strategy that Blanca walked you through. Like, who are your friends and who do you need to build relationships with?
Thanks, Maggie. All right. Anything else before we move on related to advocacy training?
The only thing I would add is Blanca did put in the translated version of the slide deck in the chat, and we've got that available for you. So all of these materials are available in both Spanish and English.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and share a bit of an overview on where we're at with our strategic planning. There's a lot of overlapping things here, and I know we have some new folks to the all hands meeting space this morning, so some things might be a little repetitive to folks who have been with us for a while, so bear with me. I just want to make sure everyone has a good understanding and full context of where we're at right now with all of this. And if at any point you can put questions in the chat or raise your hand, it'd be easier to answer questions kind of as we go. Okay. So first, some context setting. So some of these charts and maps might look familiar to some of y'all. This is kind of our evolutionary map of Pueblo Food Project as an organization. So we were founded or convened for the first time back in 2019. as the Pueblo Food Network under a coordinator from the city. COVID happened, we pivoted, took a big focus towards food access. We got some grants that we're currently still implementing. That includes our grants connected to our cooking classes, some grants around the food pantry, various programs that we're currently running. And then we had a big leadership transition. We were working mostly from working groups. So some of y'all might remember we had working groups focused in 5 different topic areas. Those working groups were actually kind of the source of a lot of the ideas that turned into our programs today. And when we had a leadership transition, Megan was running the ship. We had to kind of shift our focus more inwards as an organization. There was a lot of just groundwork that needed to be laid in order to make Pueblo Food Project a more sustainable organization, structurally and financially and governmentally. And so that was when we started to lay the groundwork to exit the city of Pueblo. So we used to be a program under the previous mayor Gradishar. That took a while to lay that groundwork and do that work to make the decision to leave and to actually implement that transition. But that all began in 2022. And then 2023 is when I joined, and we continued to do that more inward focused organizational work. That's led us to this point. So now Pueblo Food Project is fiscally sponsored from an independent 501c3, the Hadanu Collective. That decision was voted on by the coalition, last year at some point, I think in the fall. That transition happened this April, where we formally left the city and have been our own fiscally sponsored group since then. I really like this chart. This is something that Maggie kind of helped me frame out. So within any organization, we're always kind of walking that line between progress, the real work, the systems work that we're here to do to create a more vibrant, equitable, and nutritious food system. But then there's also the processes, how we are able to get that done, the mechanisms within our own organization, and the internal work that allows us to achieve that progress. And so I really like this visualization because it kind of shows how we've ebbed and flowed throughout our journey. And I would place us here right now. We've been doing a lot of process-oriented work over the last year or two. And now we're ready to start implementing some of these things and really start moving our progress work forward. All right, so a quick recap of the last almost year now. So we convened our first founding board of directors last fall. Some of them are here on this call this morning. We did a day-long retreat back in February where we really wanted to do a deep dive into the problems that we're looking to work towards as a Pueblo Food Project, and work backwards from those problem statements and result statements to determine what strategies are going to be most effective. So we looked at some problem statements. Farmers and food businesses can't sell food locally at a low cost and make a decent living. Many people can't access healthful, local, fresh food. And many people don't eat local, fresh, healthful food or don't care to. And then from those problem statements, we developed result statements. So basically looking at these problems and asking why 10 times until we got to some of the root causes of those problems. And then from those root causes, we built out results. So how we would seek to address those root causes for issues that we see in our community. So that led to our result statements, which you can see here. Those result statements are: all people of Pueblo have access to nourishing food, can use their power to make choices about their food, and can connect to their community, their culture, the land, and each other through food. So this is the framework that we're applying all of this to. So you can see our result statements are up here at the top. From there, we have our indicators, which are essentially like population-wide metrics that we use to measure how we're doing on our result statements. And then within that, there's performance measures. So the performance measures looks at how well the programs and strategies that we're implementing in order to achieve these results are working. So what I'm going to chat about is where we're at within this entire model. So we put these result statements in front of the coalition at an all hands meeting earlier this year. And it was decided among the group that this needed to be put in front of community, in front of a wider audience, to get feedback and make sure that this really is a reflection of the Pueblo that people want to see. And so we started doing that. We started doing community engagement. Maggie did a great presentation on this in our August all hands meeting. Again, you can get the recording for that. But we've started, we had our first community engagement session on the east side about 2 weeks ago. We had a really good turnout at the event overall, and we had about 15 attendees stick around throughout the entire conversation that we facilitated. So our West Side community engagement will be later this afternoon. We'll be presenting and hosting a conversation at the West Side Neighborhood Committee meeting at 3 p.m. If you live on the West Side or know folks on the West Side who you think would be able to and would benefit from attending, please pass that along to them, or you can connect them with Megan or myself. We're still planning our community engagement for the Best of Our Neighborhood and Pueblo County. We're hoping to do our community engagement throughout this fall, winter, hopefully before the end of the year. And then the input that we receive and the outcomes that we generate with community from these engagement sessions, we're going to take it all back and put it into a more easy to read format, and we'll share all of that out on the website by the end of the year. So going back to our model, that's where we're at right now with kind of stress testing our results statements with community and getting feedback and input from them on that. And then once we have our results statements, we can hone in on what those indicators are going to be. There's a lot of population-wide data metrics and things that we can look at. So that'll likely happen early next year, where we'll put that in front of you all as a coalition and kind of decide what feels like a good measurement that we want to track to look at against our result statements. And then there's performance measures. So Pueblo Food Project has been running several programs, as many of you know, throughout the last few years. So currently we're doing some program evaluation. We're working with a third-party consultant right now to see how we're doing on some of the programs that we're running, see how well they're meeting community needs. It's hard because we've been operating without like a clear model. We really got thrown into this work in the best way, and but it feels really good right now to really be naming that the purpose, the greater vision that we're all working towards right now. So that being said, with our program evaluation right now, we're deploying surveys, we're getting feedback. All of the surveys and kind of parameters for the evaluations were generated within consideration for our justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion goals. And we're doing our best to approach this in a way that will get some really good data and feedback from program participants that we can use to apply for future funding, as well as really assess like how well our programs are currently meeting community needs and all those things. So we're doing that right now. This will all tie back into strategic planning, again, with those results being measured kind of against our result statements and indicators that we generate through community engagement. So this is all tying in to our strategic planning, and it's all happening over the next couple of months. Hopefully by the end of the year, we have some reports, or at least like kind of preliminary stuff from the program evaluations that we can share. Okay, let me stop right there and just ask, are there any questions or things I can clarify or thoughts at this point? I know that was a lot, so.
I have questions and I might know the answer or just forge ahead myself without asking, but for coalition members, whether they're new or they've been involved for many years, how can they help with the community engagement side?
Yeah, I think if your neighborhood is Bessemer or Pueblo County, or if you just want to host something within your immediate neighborhood, reach out to us. We're happy to help you if you want to host a potluck or maybe getting too cold to host something outside. But we're very open to folks who want to get more engaged within the context of their own community. Or if you want to jump on board with what we're already working on, that would be awesome as well. So I would say that if folks want to get more involved with the community engagement piece, we can either host something together or just support the events that we're planning, either as a volunteer. We need note takers. We need folks to just support the events, and especially with promoting them. We really want to make sure that these events are catching community members, so that the information that we get from them is a good reflection of our population. Has the coalition ever had performance measures before or expectations for evaluation, or is this the first time to implement a best practice around data for this nature? Yeah, we have never had performance measures. So this is very much like we're co-creating, we're doing evaluation, but we also have to co-create like what we're evaluating for, which is kind of a unique thing to do. So yeah, I think this is definitely our first time implementing this. And I'm sure we can pull some best practices for this. If you have any suggestions, Dr. Kelly, or thoughts, I'd be happy to hear that around that. And thanks for that question, Lindy. Anything else? I know this is like complex and there's a lot of history and things going on simultaneously. So just know we're always happy to answer questions via email or just if you see us out and about. But we just wanted to give a high level overview as to where we're at with all of this and the direction we're going in. So the intended outcomes of our strategic planning will be a clearer vision for the purpose and strategies of the Pueblo Food Project's work that center justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So going back to those definitions and goals that we share at the beginning of our meetings, those are being pulled into the picture as we look at, why we're doing what we're doing and how we're going to do it. A clear organizational chart outlining the roles and work of the coalition, the board, and PFP staff. So working groups in some way, shape, or form will likely come back into the mix. A balance between the operation of our own programs and sub-coalitions or working groups that support PFP's mission and strategies and are sustainable within our current staff capacity, as well as a plan for financial sustainability. And so I wanted to ask you all this morning after hearing this, is there anything else that you would hope to gain or get out of the strategic planning process as an organization and coalition? And even if this is your first time joining this meeting, we want to encourage you to speak up. Your thoughts are still very much valued. Okay, I guess we're just perfect. Moving on. Just kidding.
I have a question about financial sustainability.
Yeah.
I've noticed at events signs that are like donate to PFP going up. Are we intending to continue to be a grant funded model or transition towards donor funding, or are we just exploring and seeing how it goes?
We will need to do a combination of both, likely to continue the work as is. We'll still go for grants. It would be a very long time for us to be able to fundraise everything that we need to continue programs. So right now we're working on figuring out what it means to get fundraised money, grant money together. But as of now, us having like donation things out is just us kind of trying out for the first time what it means to get donations and like learn a little bit more about that process and stuff like that. But as we dig a little bit deeper into financial sustainability, those things will become much more streamlined and we'll have a better plan as to like say like this is how much we fundraise per year, this is how much we get in grants per year. So that will all come in time.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying.
Thanks for the question. Okay. Anything else? I'm gonna keep us moving. All right. And again, if anything comes up or you want more information or questions, you can always reach out to Megan or myself. All right, so quick updates from the board. Many of you might know we're recruiting 2 to 3 new board members this November. The coalition and community had the chance to nominate board members. And so now we're in the process of accepting, like the nominees will accept their nomination. We're getting some stuff from them, like they're answering some questions, giving us their resume, things like that. And then at our next month's all hands meeting in November, we're going to share all that information out with you all, the coalition, and y'all will vote on our new board members. We'll probably have an offline voting option as well. So if you're not able to make the meeting, you'll still be able to vote. But just be on the lookout for that. The coalition both nominates and votes in our board members. So, and again, even if this is your first time joining us for a coalition meeting, you're part of this work, you're part of the coalition. Everyone who shows up has a vote in that. Currently, the board is working on our 2025 budget. This will be our first ever actual comprehensive budget, which is really exciting. We will definitely share that out once it's complete. So that will live on our website. We'll probably give either quarterly or twice a year budget updates, just so that everyone has an idea of where we're at with that. But as many of you might know, Pueblo Food Project, when we were under the city, our financial landscape was really hard to track. And Megan and I did our best with the spreadsheet that had been shared out with the coalition that we use to track our finances, but we've never had an actual like forward-facing projected budget. It's always just been kind of tracking expenses under grants. So this is really exciting. This is really big step in us becoming financially sustainable and kind of growing up and evolving as an organization. So we're really excited to develop that, and definitely we'll share it out once it is done and ready. I want to give a chance for any of our program coordinators to give updates. I know Jolene isn't here, but Lindy and Al, if you want to share, you can go ahead.
Sure. We're right at the end of the gardening season. This past month, we hosted a field trip with special education students from Pueblo West High. We had our last gardening class of the season, a garlic masterclass featuring Alan of Windchime Farm, and hosted our East Side listening session at La Familia Community Garden on the East Side. We're having our last garden workday today at RMSER. That's 330 Lake Avenue from 5 to 7. We'll just be putting the garden to bed, making sure everything's tucked in for the winter. And the last event of the season is this Friday, starting at 9 a.m. at the PFP classroom. That's a gleaning event where we pull the last bits of produce off of gardens and edible landscape, donate it to a local food bank, and then we kind of party, eat some fall foods, and talk about how all our gardening endeavors went this year. So feel free to come on Friday And after that, the gardens will be resting until next spring.
All right, for community meal prep, we have our very last class in November. So it's bittersweet. It'll be nice for us to have a rest because it is a huge lift getting a lot of awesome local produce there and helping the families all cook their own meal. But definitely worth all the effort that we've put in. Our families always have great things to say about how it's helped them and how their kids and themselves are learning about cooking and healthy eating and local food. And if Brandy's still on here, shout out for letting us use that kitchen for 2.5 years and the dining hall next to it. I think this program would have looked different if we couldn't do that. So that all being said, and our last theme is going to be a pizza party. So we'll be using some fall and winter veggies and then some of our local meats and other ingredients. Families will make pizzas. We still have room for a couple more if you and your families want to join, or if you know a couple around the community that would like to join something like this. We also, we've had a lot of wonderful volunteers that I'm so grateful for. We can always use more help, from prepping food, teaching, to cleanup, and leading other fun activities. So this is your last chance to volunteer with this fun class for now. And then, as Serena mentioned, we're doing the program evaluation. So families are receiving a more in-depth survey that would help us both brag about all the ways that it's helped our community members, and if and when we do other programs like this, make sure that they're even better for new participants. I think that covers it.
Thanks, Lindy. It's definitely bittersweet. It's been such an amazing program over the years. So yeah, y'all have one more chance to come to a community meal prep class if you've never been to one or volunteered. It'll be November 16th. Al mentioned our gleaning day will be this Friday. We'll meet at RMSCR at 9 a.m. and then deploy out to our various community gardens and edible landscapes to clean them up for the winter. Last garden meeting is, or garden work day is tonight. And then we are continuing our food equity sub-coalition. So One Colorado was our partner in that group. One Colorado is the leading LGBTQ plus advocacy organization in Colorado. They had a grant to do food work down here in Pueblo that we partnered with them on over the last 2 years or so. With that, so they were the ones leading the Food Equity Coalition. Their grant is now concluding, so they will not be able to continue doing food work in Pueblo, but we wanted to continue hosting that space because it really is a great group that's done amazing work. And so now PFP will be kind of taking charge and hosting that Food Equity Sub-Coalition. We brought in a community member who will be facilitating those meetings. So our next meeting is going to be Thursday, November 7th, right after Election Day, at 5 p.m. at our classroom at RMSCR. Food will be provided, and even if you've never been to the Food Equity Coalition meetings before, this is kind of a new chapter in it, with One Colorado stepping away and PFP kind of taking that over. So definitely encourage y'all to come on out or invite a friend and get involved in that work with us. Last but not least, save the date. Sun Soil Water will be March 14th and 15th of next year. Ticket sales are going to drop pretty soon. And we have some really exciting surprises in store. I'll just leave it at that. So stay tuned, keep your eyes peeled, and get ready for more information on that. All right, so we got a good 15 minutes left, which is amazing. We can hang out, chat. We want to leave space for appreciations, community announcements, anything that anyone has to share. Take the floor. Thanks, Simon. Come back. Yeah, Brandy.
I wanted to give a shout out to everybody who shows up to the coalition meetings. The coalition is what really binds all of the community outreach together for the food systems work that we all do. So it kind of eliminates those silos. And there's a lot of different communities across the state that wish that they had a food systems coalition that offered all of the unique services that we're able to give out to the community by leveraging all of our assets and all of our volunteer work with amongst each other. So kudos to everybody for showing up, because if you don't show up, then we can't do the work together and we don't have a coalition. So it's nice to be able to see, 20 people showing up, in the morning to get this work done. Very valuable work. So just want to say, congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Brandy. And I do second that. We really, exactly what Brandy said. This wouldn't be what it is if we didn't have folks showing up every month and willing to get down and dirty with us. So I want to give a shout out to Nick Purchase, who I know is in here, and the rest of the team who hosted an amazing Colorado Women in Ag conference that I got to go to last week. It was a really fun event, very informative, got to make a lot of new connections from folks in Pueblo County and also around the state. And it was just really awesome that Pueblo was able to host a statewide event to that level. So thanks, Nick, for all the work you do. She's probably milking cows right now, so. Okay. Well, Megan and I will hang out in the Zoom space if anyone wants to linger and chat or ask questions. Our next all hands meeting will be Wednesday, November 20th, same time and place via Zoom. And then our December all hands meeting will be an in-person potluck. So stay tuned for that. But we'll go ahead and let you all go. And again, feel free to hang out if